I'll just introduce myself. I'm David Yormasaw. I work for the IB Group in the Communications Department, and I'll be your Master of Ceremonies for this afternoon. So as you can see, we have a number of panelists. I think I counted 6. So the first session, of course, I'm looking forward to a lot of very vibrant discussions and interesting debates, so I won't take up much more of your time. Just one thing I wanted to say very briefly. I wanted to remind you all that the sessions are being recorded. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the moderator, to Anders Risberg, and looking forward to some lively discussions this afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anders.
Thank you very much, David, and I'd like to extend the thanks to the hosts and the organizers of this event. It's a critical issue. Housing and bringing stakeholders together is an effective means of trying to do something. Housing has become a critical issue, and it's chipping away at the EU value, so it is important. Supply is not meeting demand. Construction companies are asked to produce faster, cheaper, and better. And construction companies, in turn, are asking banks, for which I work, for one, to also do things faster, better, and cheaper. So it's very fitting that we're sharing here a panel between banks and construction companies, and I welcome these distinguished gentlemen, only men here, notable. And I'd like to introduce you. So to my left, Miquel Pinto, you're Managing Director of the Clúster de la Edificación. And if I'm going to translate this into something I understand, you are a center of expertise supporting cluster, the companies belonging to the cluster, and in particularly today we're going to see how you do that in the field of innovation. Yeah. Aitor Ayastuy, you're the CEO of Ulma Construction. Actually, the EIB has fairly recently financed one of your projects in recycling. Walking back from lunch, I saw scaffolding and materials with Ulma on it, so you're indeed very present in the sector.
Yes. Thank you.
Ricardo Ayala, business developer at BEKAERT, and the company is a market leader in materials. So very much look forward to hearing, what you are doing in terms of innovation. Miquel Menz, Chief Administrative Officer in GROPYUS, and actually we financed GROPYUS too recently. And we financed your automatization, wooden modular panels, energy efficiency, so also great added value on the panel. And then I have Màxim Almodóvar. We're colleagues at the EIB, but you work in the part of the bank that deals with deep tech and innovation, hence high-risk projects. So it will be interesting to hear also from a banking point of view what we are facing. And last, Antoni Bandrés from Instituto Crédito Oficial. You're the head of Corporate Finance International there. You have long experience in the field of financing in the sector, both on the lending and equity sides. And looking at I know that you're very present in the Spanish market in terms of social housing, affordable housing. So very valuable to have you here as well. So we have a number of questions that, maybe we'll start with you, Miquel. I was going to ask you, so please explain to us here, what the cluster does, how you support your, the members of the cluster, and particularly which role you see that you can play in innovation.
Very well. Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's been very interesting. So we are not a conventional trade body. We are a non-profit association that gathers companies, research centers, universities across the value chain of the building value chain. Okay, so we have a number of companies, universities, research center that under 5 pillars. We have 5 pillars: industrialization, building renovation, digital transformation, lean construction, sustainability. We have more than 20 working groups where these stakeholders, construction companies, developers, and so on, share research, develop pilot projects, and so on, under these 5 pillars. And the topics range from, and I can see Ricardo here is one of the associates, for instance. The topics of our deliverables range from prefabricated reinforced steel panels, concrete panels, to building agreements among a constructor and developer. Okay, so it's a wide range of topics, always under the innovation, building innovation. Okay, so that's what we do.
Okay, so it's clear that we have we've moved into the more nitty-gritty. If in the morning we spent time on policy, bigger issues, yeah, here we're dealing with the nuts and bolts of the industry. So, Aitor, maybe if I could ask you to let the audience know, what is it, what kind of implementation is it that you're currently implementing at ULMA, and perhaps also see, you know, what has the EIB financed, what type of project?
Okay. First of all, I would like to clarify that we are not a construction company. We produce, develop, offer, and we give formwork and scaffolding to the construction companies. It's important because our name sometimes misunderstands us. Okay, bearing this in mind, okay, for us, innovation is crucial. We have it very clear. It's one of our main strategies. We try to innovate. We try to innovate in many, many aspects. In fact, we deserve, or we dedicate 2.7% of our turnover, an amount equal to that, to innovation. Every single year, we have 65 engineers working on that the whole year. And we innovate in many, many aspects, of course. Production, because we maintain our products, we develop our products, we maintain them, we produce them. So, okay, this is one of the lines of innovation, but mainly we try to innovate in formwork and scaffolding, in the service we give to our customers. We have it very clear that it's crucial, it's strategic. And regarding that, okay, we have our place to improve is quite narrow, because our offering is what it is. And okay, regarding that, just now we are trying to develop, we are developing a panel that has to do, a panel that we put it in the formwork, and we try to substitute the phenolic that today is used in the industry, construction industry. And this is our main project just now regarding innovation. We are trying to do so. We have been working on that for 5 years. It's still a long time to go. And okay, European Bank has helped us in doing that, because innovating is, I'm going to say, it's expensive. It's extremely expensive. It's risky. When you want to do something, you have to adopt some risks, important risks. And okay, in order to do so, you need help. And just now, we have worked with you in a very good way, I would say. And okay, in some way, we are having help from you, as you have said before in the morning. We had a very good loan and very good conditions, so the collaboration is so far has been extremely good.
glad to hear that. Don't talk too much about that. And what about, so if I understand correctly, right, this is recycling. You're
Yes.
increasing use of all materials, and that brings efficiency and improves your carbon footprint.
Our business at itself is very sustainable because in some way we rent materials. And we try to develop good solutions for our customers, efficient solutions, but they have to be long-lasting materials too, just in order to make sure that they will last for a long period of time. Because we sell, but mainly we rent. So this material goes and comes back. So in itself, it's a very sustainable business. But now, what the new idea is, okay, in the forward, as I said before, we want to, from scratch, develop a panel that will substitute the actual phenolic surface. So, okay, it's gonna take a while, and that's what we are working on that now. Coming from scratch, this is the new issue. Taking scratch and making a good panel that is gonna last for a long period of time. Saying is very easy, doing is very complicated, and it's very, very complicated, really.
You mentioned access to finance as an impediment. I mean, what other barriers have you come across in
in the industrial
search for innovation?
Today morning I have heard it several times. A very fragmented industry, and this is like that. This is like that. We work in the. I know that all of us we work in the real world. We work in the real world too. We know who our customers are. And our customers, really speaking, in many cases, they are a row in an Excel sheet.
Yeah.
And this is like that. This is like that. I know that it's very nice, everything is very nice, but they are a row in Excel sheet with, if you are higher in this figure, you are out. And those small companies, they are defending this. They are trying to get in this Excel sheet. So if you are higher, you are out. If the margins are very narrow, today morning we have heard about that too. Okay, there's no space to innovate. And we are speaking about very small companies with a narrow margins. How are we gonna innovate if 94% of those companies are smaller than 10 people? So, and I know we always say that it's a very traditional market sector, but I think that there are a lot of reasons to be like that. The resistance to change has to do a lot with that, with this Excel sheet. And it's like that. And changing that means, for me, that somebody, I think that it's a much stronger project. I know that today we were speaking about huge amount of money, but it's a cultural change, and it has to be, it's changing the industry, and this is going to be extremely difficult, really speaking, because, sorry, and I finish. We develop systems, forward systems, new ones. It takes us a long time. Our customers, they don't adopt those new tools we give them. And we know, and they know that they are better tools, but it's about risk. It's, no, I'm not going to undertake. I know how to do that. I have to do a slab, a concrete slab. I know how to do it. Forget me. I have to put my figure there in this Excel sheet. And innovating there in this environment is really, really complicated.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Low level of innovation leads to little differentiation, tiny margins. Ricardo, if I turn to you. BEKAERT is in the business of materials. Can you tell us something about innovation at BEKAERT in terms of, and how it has contributed to improving your carbon footprint.
Absolutely.
And perhaps, also, how does it work? If you take an example from seed to implementation.
Okay.
So we get a feel of, the pains you go
I
through.
have a good story about that because before becoming a part of the group, of the BEKAERT group, I was an entrepreneur. So, and that's why I'm in BEKAERT today. BEKAERT is a provider of fiber for concrete reinforcement beside other materials. Being the fibers itself a material that is already lower in carbon footprint than any other steel or traditional steel they use in the industry, for pavements, for industrial flooring, for precast elements, for shotcrete, for anything that you see concrete in. It could be the fiber can substitute always or 100% of the traditional rebar, or can substitute a portion of it. So why do I say this? Because before joining BEKAERT, I was an entrepreneur, or probably I consider myself still an entrepreneur. In 2019, we came up with a project here in Spain, in Madrid, on an idea coming from our previous experiences, looking at the waste coming from the tire recycling. So on the tire recycling, there is a waste generated that is the steel. For those who don't know, 20% of the tire is made of steel. And the steel fiber goes today into foundries. And we decided to create a process to get this waste and give it a second life. So we started doing many things in 2019, then COVID came along, doing trials on how to use this fiber into concrete, knowing that the fibers are already working into concrete, but this was a different thing, a disruptive material coming from a waste, avoiding the carbon footprint of the actual recycling. So we go further than recycling because we give a second life to materials. And in 2022, we were winners of the European Innovation Council Accelerator. We were one of the companies in Spain that got that grant. And that enabled us to actually go to better prototypes on the plant, to have a pre-industrial prototype plant. And we managed to certify the first circular economy fiber in the world. Due to that and everything that we've been doing, we were approached by this company, BEKAERT, being the lead in the market, for two reasons. One, BEKAERT's core business is to produce a steel that goes into the tire. And also, one of its most strong business is sustainable construction. There are fibers for concrete reinforcement. So we came with a solution that closes the loop. The steel born for the tire travels around in a wheel for 4 or 5 years, and then not recycling it, we give it a second life when we bring it back into the industry that is craving for sustainable products. We have today the lowest carbon footprint fiber in the world, with a 0.04 global potential warming, basically zero. Is 20 times less than the best fiber in the market when it comes to environmental product declaration. And I have seen the whole process, being an entrepreneur, with the highs and the lows, a lot of lows. We had COVID in the middle that was actually hit us really bad. To have the stomach to actually put all your savings on everything that you have done in your life into a project, believing, because it was something with a purpose. It was not only about creating something that makes money, it was a purpose behind it. So it's a fiber with a purpose, and the purpose is to be the most sustainable fiber in the world that you can actually use in a sector, in an industry that is craving for this type of materials. So we went through the whole thing with a huge visibility, and also the money that we received from the European Innovation Council gave us the opportunity to actually go further and make the purpose actually be seen. Because in a sector like this, if you are not allied with a big player, it's very difficult to enter. It's kind of a very close environment, that the players are very few, like you say, it's very scattered, like you said. But when it comes to actually, you need to comply with a lot of things. First, break the barrier of using a different material. Very difficult to say. incredible because it's an engineering world that you should be actually open to new things and do engineering along the way. But it looks like we have lost a little bit of that. We are following today a little bit of a recipe, and we need to break that in a way that when something new comes along, you need to be open-minded. And it's very important because it adds a lot of value to what you're doing. And you could be first in a row to have something for this sector. So I have seen the whole journey from a seed, from an idea that you believe in, to become a seed, to get some funding that was actually funding by the stakeholders, private funding in this case. Very difficult to access funding for public funding. We managed to do it, but we had to invest money to actually get into that because when you're an entrepreneur, you're doing everything from swiping the office to building the machine. And in the interim, you change and put a tie, and then you are pitching for somebody to give you money or for somebody to talk about the project, or talk about sustainability. So you are in all phases of that. So you need a lot of support from many sides to actually make it happen. It's very difficult, very, very difficult to actually go from an idea to a seed to a prototype that actually works, and then to prove that that material can actually make sense into the construction industry. So that's more or less the way. So today we've been enabled from the beginning of this year. The company is putting a lot of investment to have a production plant here in Spain, a scale up. We are doing now the scale up due to this joint venture. And then it relates a lot to what we were talking earlier about the importance of the raw material. The raw material that we are using is all local. We don't need to import this waste from anywhere. This waste is available absolutely everywhere. It's a matter of putting the technology into place and take advantage of the environment so you can actually reduce that logistic carbon footprint at the same time, and also has an impact on jobs and people, because we are creating something that, no, we move the plant to China and then we centralize everything there. No, we produce it locally, giving opportunity to actually treat a waste, convert it with a second life, and also bringing jobs and expertise into the country and to the place. So that's something very important. And then I can relate a lot to what Heiko was saying. I think he was like a copy-paste of what was on my mind, all the processes that we went through, that we're still going through, because now we still need to prove that the market will accept a disruptive material and put it into place, knowing the challenges about building codes, legislation, certification. Every day you've been asked something else, and also who wants to be the first. And that's why being part of a huge group leading in the market of the fiber, of the concrete reinforced fiber, it's so important, because now we can actually make the original purpose of our idea, make it true. To give you a simple example, every ton of this fiber that you use is compared to taking away one car of the automobile park. And we are talking that in the fiber reinforced concrete, you don't put 1 ton into place. When you build a tunnel, you're doing 1,000 tons every kilometer. If you are doing a port pavement, probably you're putting 500 or 1,500 tons of this. So we are talking about a huge carbon reduction. Besides that, the fiber itself can reduce the thickness of the slabs, or the thickness of the elements that you are doing, so you're already saving in less use or less consumption of concrete itself. That helps a lot to enable the industry to actually go for circular materials.
All right, thank you very much. So I'd like to hear from you, Michael. We have financed GROPYUS in automatization in your manufacturing of wooden panels, but I'm sure you do a lot more. So if you could give us the German perspective of this industry. Perhaps you can also touch a little bit, as Ricardo did here, on regulation, to which extent this is something that hampers you from growing or expanding.
Yeah, sure, very happy to. And actually, maybe the German perspective at the end isn't so different, because when I listen to Ricardo, being an entrepreneur, innovating, is probably faces the same challenge, whether you do it in England, Spain, or Germany at the end of the day. So GROPYUS was founded around the idea of providing sustainable living to everyone, and I think that sort of hits two of the main topics of the day in the terms of sustainability, and then in the for everyone is this element of affordability. I brought a bit of a video just to give you something to not having being forced to just look at us, but also to look at something else. I'm also very grateful to Heiko's presentation a bit earlier, because now I can be faster. So basically, we are a provider of turnkey-ready multi-story residential buildings. So exactly also, again, what we're talking about. And we are a type 1 company in his terminology. So we believe we need to touch a lot of things. So we are following this approach, that we think our answer to the problem is we need to do a lot of things. And we have basically 5 innovations that the EIB has agreed to support us and very constantly is supporting us on. The first, and they're all connected around software, and they're all connected about the data set. So the common denominator is one set of data, a data fabric that leads from the beginning of the project to actually later having and operating the building. We have a digital planning tool that allows you to plan with our own building system, and you saw some drawings there. So it's a flexible building system that doesn't allow you to just do one house or one set of house, but you know, the walls can be bigger or smaller and higher or lower depending on what you need to do, and it's all parameterized. So it's all in the software in the end. We then produce the parts in our factory, which you just saw a second ago, which is highly automated and takes a lot of ideas from car manufacturing. We're doing this in partnership with KUKA, a German robotic company, and they're bringing technology that has never been used in housing to housing. And we are providing the IP and the software. They're providing the steel and the experience in engineering and factories. We then assemble things on site. You see pictures here. We have some innovation there, like assembling under a tent, which takes away some of the risks that you otherwise have if you assemble timber. Timber is very weather resistant, but not at the very point of assembly. Later on, it's absolutely weatherproofed. We're also bringing technologies like autonomous construction, where we use cranes that work with LiDAR chips to automatically position elements. And then our buildings come with a smart home set that allows the tenants to benefit from smart home features, and the landlords and owners to administer the buildings more efficiently. Now, that is a pretty heavy touch in the sense of we are doing a lot of things. We're obviously, for each step, we are thinking about, do we need to do it ourselves, or can we partner? And where we can partner, like windows, balconies, and so forth, even bathrooms, we partner with other companies, but still it's a lot of things we are doing as a young company. I heard a lot of things, again, from Heiko, but also from you, that I can fully subscribe to. This is an industry where if you come with a new idea, with an innovation, that's actually detrimental. So that makes it an uphill battle. And the question you usually get is, why do you have to do it differently? Can we just do it the way we've done it for the last 50 years? And you are actually more efficient. So that takes away my work and my colleagues' work, because now we can do it all, and you can be faster and maybe even cheaper. That's negative. When I think, in fact, it should be positive. And we have heard so much about the shortcoming that we have in housing that I think this market is actually big enough. And even this nice factory that you see, if we have it fully up and running, it can provide 3,500 units a year. That may sound like a lot, but it's about 1% of what Germany wants to produce, Germany alone, in a given year. So that gives you a view on how much more would be possible if we are a bit more open. I think a great theme that we heard before the lunch break on things that sort of block us or slow us down, that I can fully agree to, is you get what you ask for. So if the tender only asks for price, that's what everybody goes for, and the margins are so slim that nobody can put in an extra for free. So we aspire, and we do have the most sustainable product in our price category, so in affordable living. But even that could be much more sustainable, and we could do more in, for example, reducing greenhouse gases even further, if that is accounted for. So, and if you in your tender just say, you know, we're going to look at life cycle greenhouse gases, and we put a price on that, and there is a carbon trading scheme in Europe, and there's a voluntary one which you could use in, you know, tender. Say, well, we just treat it the way it's treated in the voluntary tender carbon trading schemes. That, for example, would help companies like ours. If you're not asking for 10 years of track record, because that immediately excludes everybody who is new in the market. Those sort of things are of great benefit in leveling the playing field.
What about you know, scaling up? I mean, exporting your model, or you know, reaching customers. I mean, you mentioned there's still a lot to tap into in the German market. What about the cross-border operations?
So the system we designed was always made for scaling, and you could argue it only makes sense if we scale to some extent. And we could be profitable just in this one factory, but that was never the idea of the company. And transporting from this company throughout Europe wouldn't make sense from a greenhouse gas perspective. But it would be it's easily replicatable in basically every member state. I think the main barriers the one barrier that we've heard about is regulation, but that's already a barrier within Germany. From a construction industry perspective, Germany consists of 16 different states, and they're very different. Even the physics are different. Fire is different in every German state. I'm not sure you knew that before, but it's actually true. But other than that, it's mainly, you know, do people care for sustainability, and is there some added value in sustainability? And then I guess in some markets, things like labor costs make a difference. So if labor costs are high, then, you know, we can be cheaper than traditional construction. If it is extremely low, like in some member states in the southeast, or maybe in the east of Europe, then it's a bit harder for our solution. But other than that, it's made to be scaled, and we actually have received interest from countries such as Canada, the US, and Australia, where we're running feasibility studies, and we have demonstrated that in all markets where the studies are done, we're actually cheaper than local production. But I mean, as I'm a European by heart, I would actually love to get our solution rolled out to more countries in Europe than to continents abroad.
So yeah, so expansions means FDI, you locate in other locations.
The IP would still stay in Europe. The headquarters are in Europe, but yeah, where the next production site would be, that depends a bit on demand.
Okay, thank you. Now let's turn to the banking industry now. And Maximo, you work in the bank's team that looks at really innovative things, and the more riskier investments that the EIB does. So deep tech. I mean, which opportunities do you spot? I mean, what are the trends? And perhaps you can, you know, also say something about what different tools you have to address, you know, different sectors, different levels of risk.
Sure. No, I'm happy that I'm talking about this after Heiko and after Michael has presented GROPYUS, because it will be much easier for me to explain the biggest trends that we see in the sector and what we look for. I think from our perspective, looking at high-risk investments in the industry for innovation, there's a lot of opportunities. But we are now seeing trends, especially in three big areas. First is sustainable materials. Of course, we have talked a lot about sustainability, reducing CO2 emissions, and finding more sustainable materials. Either improving how the existing materials like cement, concrete, or steel are being produced, or also using some materials like wood, like GROPYUS is doing. No? So that's a very big trend that we see and that we oversee, and we try to find opportunities. Then there's the second one, which is digitalization, which I think it has been also very clear in the video that we have seen. And digitalization means software for project management, for planning, for design, but also for generation of data. Like, for example, digital twins that can be used to measure certain aspects of the buildings and try to improve the manufacturing process, and trying to reduce costs, and trying to understand a bit better what is the data telling you behind, because there's not too much data about construction. That's another sector that we see and another trend. And finally, of course, and another thing that we have just seen in the video is the application of robotics and automation in the whole value chain of construction. No? So we have from using drones to just monitor a bit the construction sites, using like advanced machinery, using sensors to measure certain data points of construction, but also using robots, using 3D printers. That's something that we are seeing more and more, that it's something useful for the industry. And it's, of course, high risk, but we see value in the innovation. Also, for example, the example of GROPYUS in terms of automation, you could see the implementation of industrial robots for prefab modules. It's creating a lot of efficiencies in the process. So we really believe that bringing innovation in these sectors makes a lot of sense, and we should improve and should bring more innovation to the industry. And with respect to how we at the EIB cover the sector and innovation in the construction industry, I mean, it depends. It very much depends on the stage of the companies. But we have tools that try to cover for companies from the very early stages to the more later stages. So depending on the maturity level, we have, for example, in the very beginning, we have more an indirect approach. So either with colleagues from EIF, from the European Investment Fund, we try to dynamize the ecosystem of VC and private equity funds so that there's capital available for young startups to start producing ideas for innovation. We also have financial intermediaries that are providing loans, and they have our support on the back to pass the financial benefits to companies that are also in a relatively early stage to develop innovations. And once companies mature, which is a big challenge, and we have had a long discussion about how companies can scale and can mature in this sector, once the companies reach a certain scale, we have a tool of products that are more direct, starting from advisory services, trying to help these companies to prepare their value proposition and their proposals for investments so that they can qualify in our products. And then the first kind of direct product is the one that our team does, which is venture debt, which is the highest risk financing that we can provide at the EIB, and that looks for companies like GROPYUS that are at a very growth stage, and they are finding a way to scale, and they need a little bit more capital to grow and to expand. And the idea is that once the company matures more, even they can access to more standard corporate lending, like ULMA did. No? So we try to cover the whole spectrum of stages that a company can go to, and we try to accompany them. So it's very much, we are accompanying the companies, and depending on how the market goes and how the innovation goes, we are able to provide financing solutions to companies.
And I mean, interesting to what you say is that, I mean, we've heard numbers that 94% of companies in the construction sector have, up to 10 employees. So these are small companies. So by definition, they are not going to be particularly creditworthy. They don't have big balance sheets, etc. So the team where I work, for example, we finance corporates who typically have a 10-year track record of, big revenues and profits. Yeah, we can finance those, not easily, but we do those at scale. Now, what you're talking about and where you work, and actually where the main type of borrowers in the construction industry would be, are smaller companies. They are the riskier part, and of course, that's the capital that is difficult to come by. So there is a big problem here in the fact that it's such a fragmented industry that doesn't have scale yet, and it's difficult to finance by commercial banks. And we are still a policy-driven bank, and we have ability to do it. So Antonio, let me turn to you. You work for the Spanish National Promotional Bank, and I understand you're quite active actually in the housing and affordable and social housing area. Tell me how what's your mandate, and how does perhaps the government, the Spanish government, support you in doing what you do, and give us a sense of which kind of clients and projects you can finance.
Bona tarda i moltes gràcies per aquesta amable invitació. Indeed, we've been active for a long time, since the '93 in the sector. So ICO has widespread facilities. ULMA is benefiting in the industrial sector, in construction infrastructure, and especially after the COVID, we have a strong presence in all Spanish companies. In this sector in particular, we are working, we have a strong mandate, we have a strong concern and a strong mandate on the sector, and we are boosting our tradition on financing social affordable housing. If we look at the construction, it hasn't changed a lot in the last 300 years. This was mentioned, compared if we see a horse and the Tesla, no? But the financial sector neither has changed a lot. So the first way we are changing is adapting to this innovation and this new industrialization of the sector. So one of the ways we are adapting is that we've been observing during the different panels that there are two risks that are facing the innovation, which is the on-site construction, among others, and the risk of the innovation. Risk of the innovation can be addressed through traditional tools like equity. On-site construction has another problematic, which is basically, among others, that you are constructing out of the site and you cannot perform certain guarantees, etc. So we are working in this first block, reshaping or adapting working capital facilities that permit this not on-site construction, this off-site construction at a scale. And we are doing as well like documentary credits, international finance products that could be easily adapted to this problematic faced by the non-site construction. Moreover, and at a certain scale, we are also topping up our products in equity and debt. So we have two blocks in equity. One of them is that we observed that there was a need on the value chain of SMEs by the risk assumed by the SMEs and by the scale needed by those SMEs to create private equity and venture capital funds that really could address on a non-banking risk assessment. So we created InvestEU green funds that basically it was observing all types of infrastructure, but as the need of housing is becoming not only a need, but also an interesting business for those companies, we are observing that a lot of companies are funds are demanding to this. We have already 6 funds that are covering this venture capital and green funds under InvestEU brand, and those this is one of the products that we are addressing to the problem. The other, and I think is more accurate to affordable and social housing, is the InvestEU social fund. ICO has one of the largest experience in project finance and infrastructure finance. So what we brought is this PPP and project finance on other infrastructures such as renewables, where we have a large experience, or transport, and we apply this concept of financing to the housing sector. So what we are doing is in the double track. We are working with funds that those funds are having the same profile as infrastructure funds have in the past in other sectors. It's a long-term, patient investors that combine the capacity of promoting, the capacity of managing the asset, and the capacity of managing the rentals. Those funds, we have already 4 funds approved. We are targeting another 4 funds. I met with some bidders here, 2 local bidders that are bidding to this facility, and as allocated funds, and they're backed by InvestEU, and we are cooperating with EIB in this product. It's 500 million euros, which will have a mobilizing volume of roughly 3.2 billion euros. That will lead us to 15,000 affordable and social rental houses. This is a very interesting product that among the features that has is that there is a strong need by the price they have to reach. There's a strong implementation of industrialization in their processes. So this equity, it's covering part of the need, and the other is debt. But this is a traditional product. We started in the 90s with affordable social debt on long term. We did since 1993 to 2021 19,000 houses on this scheme. But in the last 3 years, we've done 6,000 houses, and we have a strong portfolio pipeline coming now. And this is the traditional debt product, where we cooperate not only ICO, but also with other banks. So, and just worth to mention that we have, on equity, we have 2 windows. One is direct window. You can go to ICO and as a fund and require equity from ICO. We have several funds where we participate, which is this bidding process, that are also to build directly affordable houses or to do in the value chain as an SME, any of the processes incorporated in this production. And in the debt side, we have 2 windows, which is directly to ICO or through the commercial banks that we cooperate through on lending facilities.
Very interesting. Thank you, Antonio. So I see that you actually emphasize quite a lot on the riskier segment and of business, and so which is particularly valuable to this sector, to the housing sector. I also thought it was interesting to hear that also that you work with the European Commission, the Invest EU, and it was mentioned by my colleague before as well that also the EIB does this, and I think indeed these are our roles, whether it's EIB or ECO, other MPBs, that we serve as a link between policymakers and those who can provide grants and the market. So I thought that was interesting. Miguel, I'm conscious of time, but I would like to ask you another question. It would be interesting. I mean, we've been talking about, well, actually, the morning was very much dedicated to the European aspects of this. But I would like to know, how you see that perhaps Spain, if Spain has, we've heard we have good stories, we've had examples here today. I mean, are they representative, you think, of the industry in Europe? Do you think Spain has a particular role to play in this segment of the business, or?
Yeah, well, important question, yes. I think the construction sector in Spain, it's very important. It's a strong sector. The scarcity of affordable housing, it's very urgent, as we all know, and I think industrialization, it's one of the responses to this quest, if I might say. So yeah, I think it might be an opportunity. Actually, the cluster we work for to grab this opportunity for Spain. But I would mention one aspect that it's not clear in Europe or in Spain in terms of industrialization and professionalizing this conventional construction, which is what is industrialization and how you measure that. Right now, everyone has its own way of defining what industrialization is, and that building, how much industrialization is there. We have actually made a research on this. You can download that from our website. We are actually talking with many other authorities so that we can convene what industrialization is and how to measure that. Because a brick company right now is saying a brick is industrialized construction because it comes out from a factory. But we don't need more brick factories. So we need this finance, both public and private, to go to that, to strengthen a manufacturer that it's actually non-existent or must grow. So we really need to define, to measure that in a transparent, replicable way. Some local authorities are already in their tenders, public tenders, are using these specifications. And if we do that, it will be the first step so that, again, both public and private financing can condition their funds towards projects that meet some industrial characteristics, agreed characteristics, industrialized characteristics. Okay.
I think before I ask further questions here, I mean, I think if I can ask in the audience, I mean, we've now been talking about nuts and bolts and euros. If there's anybody in the audience who has any questions prompted by a presentation, or maybe rather that wasn't. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Thomas Miorin from Edera and Energy Sprong, Italy. I'd like to ask to you a couple of things. We know the importance of a critical mass to start industrialization, and in the previous panel, they highlighted the need also of having a constant pipeline, because when we have a demand that's changing, it has a deep impact on investment that you have on CapEx. So I want to know, how do you deal with these two topics?
I mean, Michael, can I ask you to pipeline? How do you bring up a, build up a pipeline and, the critical mass? I mean, because you actually mentioned, expanding your business.
Yeah, I think it's a super valid question. It's actually one of the biggest challenges we have. I mean, if you take a simple analogy, we basically build a hotel, and now to operate it profitably, we actually need customers on a regular basis. It doesn't help us if they only come for Christmas and the rest of the year they're not there. It is a big challenge. That's why we're talking to some of the big players in the German market. So we have Vonovia as one of our investors. They are the biggest owners of apartments in Europe. We're talking to the public housing associations. But it is super challenging, and the fact in this industry that easily a project gets delayed by 6, 9, or 12 months for regulatory reasons, for public approval, whatever, is a big problem if you're trying to run a production that you try to use as evenly as possible. I don't have a silver bullet for that one, other than building up a large customer base. And as you grow, the risk becomes smaller. If you have one factory, it's a super big risk. If you have several factories, it becomes easier to level it out.
Other questions? I mean, if you'd allow me, I could just, make a few points, and then if you have any comments, that would be very valuable. I mean, so I think we've heard, right, from many speakers today that, the industry is dominated by small players. It clearly means you have fewer credit-worthy borrowers, lack of access to finance, innovation becomes difficult, so there's a real need for scaling up. Growth in the sector is hampered by fragmentation, regulation, and also the adoption rates of automatization, digitalization, is low, so it's a problem. We've heard that there's a lack of a critical mass of large corporates who are active. It's difficult to move across national borders due to national regulation, use of different materials. But we've also learned that, amongst you've given examples of recycling and improvement in materials, properties, digitalization, automatization, and I mean, something that hasn't come up actually that I'd like to ask about. It was mentioned before, the workforce, for example. I mean, I've understood that to find labor is not easy. I mean, what can you offer, in terms of attracting? How do you think that you can make, a job in this sector more interesting? Perhaps more paying as well. Shall I ask you, Aitor?
From our point of view, okay, we try to give this to our customers just in order to do things faster with less people. But again, and even knowing that the problem is there, okay, adopting new systems, new innovations, it's really complicated here. And again, it has to do with the risk. It has to do with the Excel sheet. I insist on that. It has to do with a very simple problems that the people that carries out the job sites, has to face every day, in the everyday.
Yeah, the
routine.
people I saw with the scaffolding out there, yes, it was not
like that.
high-skilled labor.
No, of course not, of course not. But you need them, and you have to bring them. Then you have to make a scaffolding that is lighter, than it's more time spans, and it's more effective, and it's easier to assemble. But it takes a big effort that our customers adopt those new innovations. This is like that, and it has to do with the risk, and it has to do with the narrow margins, and it has to do with I'm repeating myself.
Ricardo, actually, when I was on BEKAERT's website trying to prepare myself here, I went into your, looking for jobs section. I wasn't looking for a job, but and I saw you actually made quite a big attempt at, trying to make your industry look interesting. And the candidates, the young candidates, and there were a lot of educated people there who were giving, examples of their jobs. So can you tell us something about, how you've addressed, staffing and skills of labor?
That's it's an important question that I will try to answer from my previous experiences, because I've been joining the BEKAERT group for the last only 4 months. But it works very similar to before I was an entrepreneur, I used to work for Volvo Trucks, Swedish company, and they behave more or less the same way. The way we encourage on the staff is there is a lot of respect for people, respect for what you say, what you have to say. You can actually have a voice when you are talking about innovation, discussions on things that you don't agree. You can agree to disagree without jeopardizing your jobs, which makes us go forward all the time, because that's the only way that we listen to people, what people has to say. In our company, there is a lot of skilled people, absolutely. It's different than what you're talking about, the construction, the guy who is putting this into place, etc. Actually, the whole team that we have is a very skilled team in many ways, technically, on putting on the job sites, the support that we do on the job sites, how we support the customers. It's a lot of knowledge along the way. And then when it comes to the factory, now I'm talking about the factory that we have here in Spain, we basically have a problem, but it's related more to the country itself, that we cannot pay more the employees. We want to pay more, but then you create a problem for everybody else. And it's difficult to deal with that, because we actually would like to raise the salaries and have probably a better skill, educate people even more within the company processes, your own skills, so you can actually opt for a better job after us. And we encourage people to actually do that, but it's very difficult because the environment, it makes you very strict on that. And at the end, like you said, it all goes down to the penny. Because if we have more skilled people, that we pay more, our product, somebody has to pay for that. So you will increase your solution probably in an X amount that you are no longer competitive. So it's a tricky situation that as an entrepreneur, I suffer big time, because my thinking was completely the other way around. That I can have more skilled people and probably less people, because then with a few people I can do more, because I have better paid people, and also their skills are broader and they are actually compromised of doing it. And today what we see is that it's difficult to get loyalty and compromise from employees to on the company related to the payouts that they get. So it's difficult to answer that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to make just a final point here. That we've listened to ICO, how you are acting as a conduit for the government to finance markets that are typically difficult for private sector, private banks to finance. And we at the EIB, we do the same, and we've given examples of we work with the European Commission and how we are able to lend, blend, and advise. That's as policy institutions, policy banks, that's what we can do. But in order to scale this up, I mean, what we can do in terms of amount is still, you know, a drop in the ocean, and private capital must come in. So yeah, we need to have investors who can then be served by commercial banks. What would you say, Antonio, from a, you know, a Spanish perspective, is needed to, you know, to get the commercial banks involved in the sector? I assume today they are providing working capital loans, overdraft, short term, but if to help the sector scale up.
Short answer, I think there is finance available. We need to do some innovation to those specificities that were mentioned today and to cover that. But I mean, we described the four bottlenecks: soil availability, permitting, construction and industrialization, and finance. And we will go to the lowest of the speed of the four. I don't think finance is the lowest speed. I mean, there is finance available on a short answer. ICO is a counter-cyclical institution. We did it in several crises or COVID. In this case, we are covering a strong demand, but we are noting how other banks, we have a facility on lending to the commercial banks, how they are stepping in the sector. Because as I mentioned, it's a strong concern, there's lack, but now it's becoming a very interesting sector as well. Because, I mean, if you see the figure of need in volume of investment, you don't see in other sectors that are coming down, other than energy that is raising back. But I think there is enough finance. I mean, we have available finance. We don't have a queue of denied transactions. I have to say, we have these two windows, and the banks, if it's your question, are more and more getting into the sector. But this is the role of EIB and ICO. We have to be a step ahead on the need. We have to create the product, if it's the case, and we have to be anchor investors in funds for equity or being complementary to the banks. And as it has happened with renewables, hydrogen, other sectors that at the beginning have a G curve, the banks follow fast and efficiently.
So again, the purpose here was to bring together stakeholders and member states, indeed, as you mentioned, have an important role to play in creating an environment where investors can invest and banks will then come on board. And yeah, policy banks like us can help set examples. I think that we've come to the end of our session. I'd like to thank you very much for being a good panel, and thanks for the questions and the interest from the audience. Thank you.